Welcome back, everybody. In today's episode, I'm going to show you how to wet sand and polish clear coat into a perfectly flat finish. Let's get to it. When it comes to wet sanding, we have a few different options. We can use a DA, we can use a hard block or harder block. This has a little bit of flex to it still, or we can use a soft block. And today we're going to go with the soft block, and I'll explain why. I didn't block this deck down when I painted it. The final cut of the clear before we laid our graphics, I did use a small block just to sort of knock down the ends here and the edges. So those areas are somewhat flat, but it's not completely flat. If you use a hard block on a surface that you didn't block every step of the way through your primer and your various coats of clear, you're going to burn through. You're going to have high spots that you burn right through. So I'm going to use the soft block here to get started. We're going to use some 1200 grit wet to get going here. And we're just going to go in a nice crosshatch pattern and slowly knock this down. So I've been soaking my paper here for about 15 minutes. And I'm going to, you'll notice I keep spraying this. I keep wiping it clean with a clean cloth here, because you never want to be working dirt into your paint job. So we'll start right on the end here. It's a nice flat spot. This clear has been curing for about 2 weeks. So we'll go in one direction, and then we're just going to go at about 30 degrees in the opposite direction. So these end areas I know were blocked flat because I blocked the clear before our last round of graphics. However, we do want to be careful around like these curvature areas and whatnot. So we've gone over this area about 4 times now, and as you can see, we're almost completely dull, which is sort of what we want. We just want to knock down that texture. So you can see there's a tiny bit down in here around that curve. So that's just from our graphics that we were masking. And then sort of a glossy area right in here too. And I think that's from when I was dabbing on that candy. It made a couple higher areas, but that's totally fine because that'll definitely block out. So let's continue blocking here. We'll block this whole board with the soft block, and like I mentioned, the soft block is just going to sort of follow the contours of the board. It's not going to try to make a stiff, perfectly flat line, but it's just going to mellow everything out and make it look nice and flat.
I'd like to quickly point out one mistake that I keep making in this video, and that's putting the sandpaper face down on a surface. Now, I know my surface is clean here, and I do rinse it every time I pick it up again. However, it's something you should be in the habit of not doing. As soon as you put that sandpaper down, face down, there's potential you're going to pick up dirt or some debris and then end up sanding it into your project.
So I blocked out about 90% of the texture that was in here. As you can see, there are some glossy areas still, in particular where that's clear separated on my first coat for whatever reason. I'm not going to try to knock that down 100%. Like I said, I don't want to burn through, and for something that's not going to be necessarily a showpiece, it's just going to go on my wall. I'm not concerned about it being perfect. If I was, I would sand that down, re-clear it, and then do our cut and polish after. So aside from that, we're looking pretty good though. A couple other minor spots that were just defects in the skateboard that I didn't prime and block. But overall, I'm happy with where we're at. So our next step is going to take off more material as well, and that's going to be 1500 grit Trizact on the DA. You could do this by hand if you wanted to, if you're not as comfortable with a DA. I'm more than comfortable with it, so we're going to hit it with 1500 and then 3000. Again, the 3M Trizact, the 3000 is a soft pad. If you need to do any polishing, or wet sanding, I guess, 3M Trizact sandpapers are awesome for this kind of work. And one mistake I did notice I made, I'm working on top of the paper that I sprayed on, which was water-based paint. As you can see, that blue came off there, which is a little bit of concern when you're polishing, because when you're wiping it clean and all of a sudden it's like, oh no, there's blue coming off. You think you burnt through. You haven't. Well, I haven't in this case. It's because of my work surface there, but that is something you want to keep an eye out for. If you start getting color in your sandpaper or whatever, it's time to stop and think about re-clearing before you start doing anything else. All right, guys, let's use that DA and knock this down a little further.
Here I am using the 3000 grit now. I forgot to get a normal speed video, unfortunately. However, you can see I go over it until I get the texture soapy water coming off my pad. That's when I know that pad is doing the work it's supposed to do. It's taking some material off. As soon as I feel that pad start to get a little bit dry, then I rinse it off and give it a fresh coat of water.
I went over it with the 3000 there a couple times, and as you can see, it's starting to get its gloss back. It's always kind of satisfying when you get back to this point. As you can see, our finish is very flat. Now, it's not perfectly straight. Don't want to confuse the words straight and flat, but the finish itself is flat. There's no orange peel left. There's very little, if any, texture on any of the lines there. So I'm extremely happy with where we're at. So now I'm going to go to the wool pad and some stage 1 3M Perfect-It compound. I know this is stage 2 bottle, but it's stage 1 in there. So we'll start off with that, and that's going to knock this down nicely and start bringing our shine back. Start with a small spot on the end here so you guys can get an idea before I throw it on a time lapse. Just putting a few dabs of polish into my wool pad there. I'm just going to sort of work it in, otherwise it's going to fling polish everywhere. And you'll notice on this Milwaukee polisher, I do have it on the 1 speed. And you can see after my initial cut, just with the wool pad there, that's looking fantastic. I've actually, I've never polished this Durafil Clear before, and it polishes very nicely. So we'll continue along with that. We'll go over the whole thing with the wool pad, and then we can step up to some foam pads.
I'd like to point out that wool pads are not 100% necessary. If it's your first time polishing, I wouldn't even touch a wool pad. They're extremely aggressive, which is great if you're experienced. However, they generate a lot of heat, which can easily damage your clear coat. So if it's your first time, just pick up the foam pad. It'll take you a little longer, but it's a lot safer.
I finished with the stage 1 foam pad and compound, and the finish is looking awesome. It looks great under our garage lighting. However, I know out in the sunlight, it will still show some swirls. So we're going to step it up here to the stage 2 3M pad with a 3M stage 2 Perfect-It polish. With a color like this, where it's not a solid color, there's a lot going on with it. I'm not going to worry about stepping up to the stage 3 polish. It just isn't necessary. If this were all black or a solid, like really dark blue or something like that, I would 100% hit it with that stage 3 polish. But for something like this, it's not quite worth it. So we've wiped off that stage 1 polish with our clean microfiber there, and now we're going to hit it with the stage 2. I realized I didn't show the stage 1 with normal speed, so I will show you the stage 2 here. Now, something with polishing is that it takes some practice to understand how long you need to go with each stage. I personally find each stage gets a little bit quicker with the sanding, then it slows down again when you get to the polishing. The first stage takes a little longer, but then it gets quicker the higher you go. So the stage 2 here isn't going to take us long. I'm going to go over it probably once, maybe twice, and it's going to look great. Now, you may start polishing with your stage 1, and you might find you might still have some sand scratches. You might have to go back and sand again. Or, again, you might start with your stage 2 polish, find there's some swirls from your wool pad that aren't quite coming out. You might have to go over it with the foam pad again. So that's just one of those things. Takes a lot of practice to get used to, but you might have to go back over things once, twice, maybe even 3 times. Don't get discouraged by that. Sometimes you just have to keep at it. So we'll start on the end here. Just gonna work that polish across the surface and into the pad. So as you can see there, it's nicely worked into the pad. We're not going to spray it everywhere, so now I'm going to go full speed. Again, just working a small area. I'm going to go back and forth in one direction and back and forth in the other direction. And I can see there's still a lot of polish residue still there. Yeah, I can sort of see it on camera there too. So I'm just going to keep going over it one more time there. You never want to try polishing with a dry pad. You're just going to run into issues. And you guys might see me gripping my polisher with 2 hands here. I'm not really putting any pressure on there. It's literally just the
not even, I wouldn't even say it's the weight of the tool on there. It's just me holding it, trying to keep my angle consistent. So that's just me working it back and forth, not putting any pressure into that pad. So I'm going to throw you guys on a time lapse now. We'll go over the whole thing, and then we'll hit it with some detail spray. With our stage shoe done now, I've moved over to using a wax and polishing towel. This one is from Simon's, pretty common at Canadian Tire here in Canada land. I hate these tags though. They will scratch. I assume you can just pull them off. However, I've just folded this towel so that that is hidden. And then I've got some detail spray. So this is going to be our final step. This is from Adams Polishes. I've used a number of these, Norton, Meguiar's Final Inspection, all kinds of detail sprays. Essentially, they're just going to give you a little bit more shine. They're going to fill potentially minor scratches. And the way you apply these guys is you give them a light squirt. You don't need a lot on there. Just do this half of the board first. And you're just going to do gentle circular motions. And these polished towels, they're essentially just a microfiber, but a little bit finer. Equally uncomfortable to hold if you work with your hands for a living. And I've worked that in. I'm going to flip it over to my dry side of the towel now. You can use 2 towels if you're doing a large surface. Have a dry towel and a wet towel. And there we go. That is gorgeous. This clear really does polish up nice. Let's get a few glamour shots. I hope the camera does this justice because we got a beautiful finish on this. And you can see the reflection of all the junk in the background in my garage there. Nice and flat. Thank you so much for joining me today, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe. I appreciate all of your views. All right, and we'll leave it at that. We'll see you next time.